All right, guys, this is one of the last test runs we're going to do before we put in the 48 volt 1800 watt conversion here. I'm doing about 17, 18 miles per hour on flat surface here. I'm weighing in at about 155 pounds or so. I've actually got it up to 21 miles per hour. Of course, that was on a slight downhill. That was over my GPS app with miles per hour. But again, averaging just on a regular flat street like this, we're doing about 17, 18 miles an hour. I'll go ahead and insert a little clip right now showing you I was zipping along about 17 miles per hour. But let's go ahead and hopefully the 48 volt 1800 watt conversion will bring this guy up to more beefier. Hey guys, if you're new here, welcome. We have a lot of fun here. Smash that subscribe button down below and turn on your bell notifications so when fresh content comes out, you're the first to know. I've already done one modification. This is just going to add to the deluxe package. Is I actually have three 12 volt 15 amp batteries inside of each one of these. I'm probably going to be doing this to my MX500 as well, but we're going to start off with the big dog. I've already matte blacked these, black on yellow, black on red. Those videos are already up on the channel, so go check those out. And I've even showed you how to take the plastic off, etc. I won't go into that on this video, but I'm going to be showing you the key points of doing the conversion. So again, when you buy the stock, you get the 12 volt 12 amp, and I've upgraded both my razors to the 12 volt 15 amp. That's given me a longer ride time. I'm about 155 pounds and I'm doing about 18 miles an hour. So those batteries are a definitely upgrade. So first thing you want to do is for this kit, I have ordered one more battery. So that is now 12, 12, 12, and 12. 4 times 12 is 48. And each battery is 15 amp. I'm going to show you exactly how I'm going to be placing the fourth battery inside the compartment and latching it up. And I've watched a couple other YouTube videos from other guys as well. And I forget the channel name, but it's the dad and his son that are doing the modification on their MX500, showing you precisely how to put it inside the extra battery and rewire it. But thank you. You're a rock star. So let's go ahead and go through this real quickly. Again, you're going to need another battery. That's a total of 4, comes with 3, and all this will be linked in the description box of the video. Those links are going to take you to where I purchased it. All right, so in the kit, and this is actually, the reason I'm actually doing this is because prices have fallen tremendously. And I actually just picked all this stuff up on Amazon. I actually got this one on eBay, but if you're going to be ordering on Amazon, if you're a Prime member, this will actually come a day earlier than this. And you will also need a 48 volt lead acid battery charger. I got this one on Amazon again as well. It has a stock plug-in right here, same as the Razor. Normal cord on that side as well. Again, I will link this in the description box below. 48 volt, 2.5 amp. So here we have in this kit right here, which again, I'll have linked in the description box below. It comes with the controller, watt power, voltage 48, current 33 amp, and it's a brushless DC motor controller. You have a twist throttle with your connections here, and also in the box here, we have mounting screws and a bracket and all that kind of good stuff here. I think we will have to mod the bolt pattern. I know another YouTuber actually had to do that for his MX500. I'm not sure if they actually gave you a little bit more space on the 650 or not. We'll get to that when it comes. And here we have our 48 volt. The reason I went with this kit on Amazon is this has a higher speed than some of the other kits I saw online. This is a brushless 48 volt DC. Output is 800 watts at a speed RPM of 4,500. That's a fantastic looking motor. Not to mention it was the best reviewed motor on Amazon, or I should say the entire kit. Everyone's main objection was the layout of the speed controller. I think they might have upgraded and labeled it correctly, but those diagrams are online, and if it's not labeled correctly, we will again walk through that as well. That's going to be it for the box and the kit. Again, motor, mount screws, throttle, controller. Extra battery was separate, but again, all that's linked below. So first thing you're going to have to do is obviously pull off your plastic. I want to cut this video down a little bit, so I won't go into complete detail, but just remove the top plastic, remove your side compartments here, and on the other side, there's screws all the way around. Let's go ahead and pull that off. All right, this is what the batteries and the inside are looking like. These batteries are 15 amp. We have our MX650 controller here. I actually did some resoldering and put an XT connector right here as well. I might be using that again in this video. We have our fuses here, here, and here, but we're gonna get into how we set up a fourth battery. But giving you kind of a quick diagnosis of it here, we need to go ahead and pull this bracket off the top. And then what we're gonna do here is, if you want to go ahead, you wanna flip the battery around and you can shove it in here in the corner, zip tie it a couple times, bada bing, bada boom, but I think I'm gonna take it a step further like the other YouTuber did and fold down these brackets right here. Fold down all four sides so it's laying flat, and then flip it that way and that way so it's not a big gap right there. Kind of sitting this way, and then this one flush all the way down, but we'll show you that. So you do need to remove this screw, remove this bracket off the top of this one, and we're gonna need to remove our old controller as well. Okay, so the biggest issue right off the bat is the placement of the new 1800 watt controller. It's a lot longer, and we're gonna have to definitely do some cord management here. I have removed the old one here, and this one definitely takes up some more space. I don't know if that's gonna be the final area, but I do like this because this little bracket here is intertwined in the little groove here, and then obviously we will be zip tying that, all sorts of good stuff, if I have it right there, if I leave it right there. The only other option I can see to make sure we have our case that's able to close is possibly figure out another solution for that, but I don't know. We'll get to that. But I do want to show you, so this is the option number one for the battery placement. So obviously this is stuck in here, and with the cover on, you'd probably have to modify the cover, but this is an option. That's not going to go any lower than that because this is slanted right here. So the best option I'm going to go with is the other YouTuber. He actually bent this down. All four sides, like again I talked about, we're going to bend that down, bend this one down, that one down, and the one over here. We're probably gonna have to obviously pull these batteries out. I'm gonna have to rewire them anyway. I wanna be very careful the way I do bend that. I don't think I'll take out all of them, but definitely place these ones down appropriately. This is again my fourth 12 volt 15 amp battery. There's 1, 2, 3, and 4. So I'll be back with you and show you what tool I'm using to bend that down. All right, this is what it's looking like so far here. The end pieces here and here are a little tricky. I actually used the best I could. I just been using this. These pieces are very, very easy. Again, just channel locks or some really high-end needle nose pliers. Just bend that down. Try to level it out as flat as you can. I'll get this a little bit more level here. But these are a little bit tricky because it's just kind of hard to work around right over here. So I actually used just your regular metal saw, and I actually just cut that off, and I will be doing the same to this. You can try to get a hammer in there, a punch, and just try to knock it down flat as possible. But for me, I'm gonna go ahead and just take those off. Again, the batteries are gonna line up against here and here, and just that much extra balancing space for the batteries is not gonna matter in my opinion, but I'll leave that up to you if you wanna do that or not. Now this motor does come with some mounts on the side that will have to be removed for the motor to be able to sit precisely into the razor. Here's a little tip for you here. You can either simply grind them off, you can metal saw them off. The second one right here, I actually just used these and wiggled it back and forth a few times. It was a little bit of a struggle, but I did it, and I was able to pop that off without even sawing any of it. But the first one, I did about 1/4 of the way to weaken, and then I just wiggled it back and forth, pop those bad boys off real nicely here. This is what they're looking like right here. You can, of course, sand those down if you want to. You can try to remove that whole entire thing. I believe the weld is still there. I'll leave that up to you. I'm gonna probably just go ahead and leave that there. This is very lightweight. That's only gonna add probably an ounce or so of weight, but it's really simple if you wanted just to knock the rest of that off or cut through the rest of that. All right, guys, good news. We have our motor in. It mounts beautifully right here. I did a couple little slight modifications to it, and any trouble that I'm having, I'm gonna hopefully save you the time and effort when doing this. So the first thing you're gonna do is your cord is gonna come out the side just above this. There's no need with this particular one that I highly recommend you get so that it's just a smooth process. I've seen another YouTuber, he had actually cut a little notch here without completely cutting through it, but just a little notch because the cord was sticking out right here. This one just sits right above it. So you have your 2 screws right here and here. Now this little screw right here with this particular one, as you can see there's a washer and another little lock washer, the black one right underneath that there. If we look down here, which is a little bit tricky, but there's actually 2 more of these that are right behind this here and here, mounted here and here. I actually had to remove both of those on the lower ones below, tightening it back up just fine. I think it's going to be completely fine. This one still has it. The other 2 don't have the washers, but I tightened it up really nicely. I don't see any issue with that. That was able to give me the clearance I needed down here at the bottom so that this side could slip in real beautifully and my holes were lining up really nicely with my screws here. And like I said before, we showed you, I took off the edge here and here for the mounting, and I'm just wrapping my cord in through there right now. Let's go to the other side real quick. Here is the other side. It's not completely on this here, but we're going to be getting to that. We'll probably just loosen up this. I have my chain tensioner off for just a split second. So we have this here. You might need to slightly, and be careful with this little bracket right here, you might need to just bend that back just a tiny bit. You can use some channel locks or something like that. Again, don't do it if not necessary. I did it just slightly before I was messing around with those washers, and this one slipped in real beautifully, and that's looking great. Now, something I actually just noticed, so this is the one with the washers, and that's backed up just a little bit, but then look at this. The ones with the washers taken out, it's actually screwed in deeper, so I think that looks really good, actually. Look at this one as well. It actually is poking out just a little bit more than this one, so I think that's actually going to be a very nice, no issues involved with that. Okay, so before we move forward with the motor, we do have a small hiccup. It's not that major at all. And we have to actually remove this little sprocket, and we are going to be replacing it with our MX650s or MX500, whatever bike you have. We have to then remove that one on the original Razor motor and replace it with this one. Now, what I'm probably going to do is I'm probably going to keep these and upgrade my brother and his wife's Pocket Mod moped Razors, or I'm going to sell these used on eBay because they are still fully functioning and working. You can recoup some of your money from your parts. Now, it is reverse threaded, and I want to thank the Amazon reviewers on this product. They're helping us out. So that nut is on there reverse threaded, meaning you're actually going to act like you're tightening it to be able to remove it. All right, I have my old MX650 motor sprocket on right here. Again, this nut is reverse threaded. So what you're gonna have to do is behind here, you're gonna get on, I believe with this one, don't quote me on that one, I think it's a 10 or 11. The MX650 is a 9, I believe, but there's a little slot right in the back of this, right there. So in this case, I would get my wrench on, slip it on that way so it slips in the back of the chain, and then get your other wrench on this nut right here. And while you're holding your left hand, you're gonna be tightening this bolt. Again, it's reverse threaded, then this bolt will come off. Now, because of the age of my MX650's little sprocket, it was on there kind of tight. There's like a little washer underneath the nut as well, but that's it. If you have to jar it up a little bit, be careful not to bend it, but go ahead and give it a couple taps and that will loosen it, and then you can pull it off, and this one just pressed on really easily. This one as well, I kind of had to just lightly kind of knock it a little bit to jar it to be able to pull it off, but this one slipped on just beautifully. Same thing, pop your wrench on, and then you're gonna loosen this to tighten it back up. Do it nice and tight so that sprocket's on there really good. Put your chain tensioner back in proper place. And how I actually put that on, I actually had to loosen the back wheel, drop it down, throw it over here, and then tighten my back wheel back up. And now it's looking beautiful. So the motor's in. And now we are working on the batteries here. Now, obviously, before you comment, I'm not the best solderer, but I get the job done. If you want to do it a little bit better than I did it, I'm going to show you some end caps, some sliders that you can do. Okay, so the obvious choice would be a connector like this, and you slip in your wire. Unfortunately, these weren't the best option. I paid about $3 for them. They have some covers on them. I couldn't find any without the covers on there because I would want to obviously solder in as well. This will hold. It's not the best looking. I'm gonna wrap that with some electrical tape. Don't worry about that. You can do some heat shrink, but I've never had an issue on any other item that I have soldered, my electric dirt bikes or my brother's pocket mod razor mopeds as well. This will work, but obviously something like this is a lot cleaner, so I'll leave that up to you guys. And what these do is these just literally slip right on, and then if that plastic wasn't there, you would tack solder that onto it for an extra stable connection. And so let's get to the batteries here, and then we're gonna get to the controller. So I've removed this, not necessary for the batteries, but since the 15 amp ones are thicker than the 12 amp ones, I was watching these guys with the 12 amps and they were fitting them the other direction, sliding them in beautifully, and I'm like, oh, why aren't mine working? Well, I have the 15 amp, they're a little bit thicker, so in order for this to work, I actually had to lay them with the logos this way and press them together this way. Now I know what you're thinking. Unfortunately, our box is not going to fit on there exactly how we want it to fit on there. It's going to be pushed out, so we're actually going to have to probably go get some custom screws that slip through that are a little bit longer. Yes, there will be a gap. We're going to try to do our best to make it look as best as possible, but that will stick out a little bit. As we can see here, it's about an inch or so. It's about an inch or so from this bottom battery on each side. It's sticking out about an inch, actually a little bit less, maybe in half an inch on each side, because this one actually moved over. I just temporarily threw some duct tape on there while I was soldering so the batteries don't fall off while I'm working on there. We most likely will be using some sort of lock-in system, zip ties, worst case scenario, but we'll get to that. Okay, so let's start with the top battery pack right here. You're gonna go red right here is going to lead up into our first fuse. Now I have more fuses than other YouTubers do on other videos. So we have our red into the fuse here, coming down to our battery charging port here, which goes into our side box panel. Again, red to fuse leads into the white compartment here, the clicking, and that leads to over here on this side, that leads into the black, coming up here to the black here. That is going to be, again, there's a better shot of it there. That is going to be your plug coming around here to the black here. And that one goes into this one here on the side of the box. We will be keeping all this stock. Next up, let's go ahead and come back around here, and we have this one here. Now this is the proper way to do it because we have 4 batteries. Black right here, and I actually had to go to Home Depot and just go get by the foot. It was 39 cents per foot. I didn't have enough spare, but that was the only wiring that I did have to buy. I soldered in right here, black, and it comes around the back of the battery pack over to this side, which is going to be red. That is soldered in right there. And this wire that I purchased at Home Depot is a 10 gauge, the exact same width as these wires here. You want to go with 10 gauge, again, 39 cents a foot. Okay, so that takes care of that complete side. Now we come over here to this one here, which is black, and that one comes down to my other fuse. If you don't have fuses, it's okay. You need probably at least 1 fuse, and if you're doing the modification, you have at least 1 on your MX500. Again, my MX650 had 3 fuses stock. So black comes down here to a fuse, which goes into a red, which I already had those ones soldered in like that from my other modification I did when I redid the battery packs. Then we come over here to the middle section here, which is going to be our small little jumper with a fuse. If you don't have a fuse, no worries, but we're going to go black jumping over here to the red one on this side. And then lastly, which we've already seen, is this one here, which is connected up to the plug here, which we first talked about. That is the proper way to do an inline 48 volt. Again, each one of these is 12 volt. So that's the wiring for the battery. And what's really awesome about this is I highly recommend it, especially for wiring. So because this is a system and you purchase it all together, this motor, these mounts for the motor and plugs and everything go a direct fit into our motor wiring here and here. This is all your motor wiring. Now I just need to figure out how I'm going to connect these. Right here shouldn't be a big issue at all. And then because this system also came with a throttle, which I wasn't completely stoked about because I wanted a voltage meter, I have another one of those, but it has the precise pinages 3-wire into the throttle 3-pin, which is actually labeled throttle. So it just makes it a lot easier. If you knew what you're doing, you can definitely go get a different throttle, but it's just going to make it so much easier to wire it all up. So your MX650's throttle is going to be a 6-pin. Your MX500 should be a 4-pin, I believe. But you're going to have to take off that, like I mentioned, snip these zip ties here and here, feed that throttle out of the front, take your Allen screw key and loosen that up. Spray some WD-40, lift that up with like a flathead screwdriver, spray some WD-40 in this grip. It'll slip off really easily. Once this is loosened, the whole throttle will slip right off as well. Same thing if you're going to be redoing this one, which I highly recommend because obviously the system does come with other grip over here as well. Pry that up right here. So just push that back, pry that up with a flathead screwdriver, spray some WD-40 in there with a straw. That's going to get the oil from the WD-40 in the grip. Go back and forth like this. If it's still struggling, spray some more. It'll slip right off. Old BMX trick I used to do back in the 90s. And then how to put them back on, obviously wipe it completely clean, free that oil off of the handlebar, spray hairspray into the new grip and over the bars here, and then slip it back on. Hairspray will dry, it will grip beautifully. Trust me on that one. Again, an old BMX trick. Now I'm running through a couple different problems here, but nothing we can't work around. Again, hopefully by my video will help you guys be able to tackle these issues right off the bat. And I want to thank again the Amazon reviewers for letting us know on this particular one, the red and orange, the electric door lock, that's actually going to be your on and off switch. We're going to actually have to mod that so that our stock switch we're going to actually pull those wires out for the charging portion of it. We're going to get to that, don't worry about that, but we are going to be using the stock on and off switch that comes on the back side, the little clicky switch, and we're going to be routing it into our electric door lock. One way to do this, you've probably seen maybe on other videos, but if you want to leave that on, you just do a little paper clip in one side and in the other, like a little horseshoe just stuck in there. What that does is that jumps the trigger so the controller is always on, but I think it's a lot more clean to go ahead and use the stock switch. So that if you do have this parked out front somewhere, someone hits the throttle, it's not going to run on you. Unfortunately, I have had that happen one time to me where I had the switch on, they hit the throttle, and it just took off and fell over. So we'll go ahead and get to that right there. So I recommend using the on and off switch. Down here, I have my brake lines here. Now, one issue we have is we have female connectors. There's two. The purple and black are both your brake line connectors for your front and back brake. We have those right here, but they are also female and I don't have any males. So what I've done is I've used my XT60 connectors, which are really phenomenal. I already had them. You guys can obviously buy the male ones if you need to, but what I'm doing here is I'm actually cramping. I took it out of the female one, used my needle nose to cramp it up, slip it in there, and then we are going to be soldering that into the XT60 connector. And what's cool about the polarity of these wires is it doesn't matter which one's positive or negative. What it's doing is it's closing off the circuit so that once these are hooked up correctly, if the brakes are pulled and you're trying to twist the throttle, it doesn't work. But once you let go of the brake and twist the throttle, it will work. That's just a safety precaution. You totally can skip this step if you feel comfortable in that and leave them unplugged. I had my other ones on my MX500. They're not even plugged in, meaning that if I pull the brake and still hit the throttle with my right hand, it still will go. So that's just a little heads up on the brake wiring. All right, for this portion here, we will be needing to take this little cover off here. We will then need to pull all 4 of these pins here, removing this entire system. If you guys are super Electrical, you might be able to rework that, but we're going to be getting rid of that whole entire thing. And our new controller comes with the red and black terminals here. Now, unfortunately, they have a little bit different of connector heads here. We will be figuring out how we are going to be connecting it. But what we're going to be doing here is running 2 lines. Now, we might actually be able to save 2 of these wires if you haven't pre-purchased or pre-wired other ones, but we only want 2 of these. And either what I'm going to do is I'm going to resolder these into an XT60 connector, but they're shrink wrapped beautifully, so I'm going to try to figure that out. But we need to connect these 2 to 2 wires coming in here. I will be showing that to you in just a second. If you're seeing any corrosion on the terminals, clean that off with a wire brush, or just use the right side, the top and bottom, like we see here. I'll use a little wire brush just to clean that up. But we want clean connectors because this, again, is going to be charging your battery, and you don't want any corrosion on those terminals. All right, if you like simple connectors, again, check out the XT60 connectors. I will, again, have these linked in the description box below. So I was able to salvage as much as possible here. Again, I'm going to be using the upper and lower portion of the right-hand side here. I was able to strip the wire down because this is a little bit thinner wire, and I was able to save this thin red one from, remember, our setup that I actually pulled off of it here. Just yank that little red one out. You can get a little bit more creative if you want to use thick to thin, but I decided, hey, you know what? Let's go ahead and just let's do thin wire to thin wire. So I was able to recycle a few of these pins after I took them out of one of these prongs here. The small red one already had a little clip in it. The red one I reused, took it apart, soldered it back in, and then these sides here I was able to go ahead and solder that into a XT60 connector. Again, there might have been a simpler way to do it, but that just slides on down like that. The other one, same thing, like that there, coming up to a connector here. Now on this side, electric door lock is going to be our on and off switch. So I took those pins out, crimped the wire kind of like in a circle, like we saw earlier in the video, slid them in nice and tight, and then soldered over them. And then, of course, electrical tape over each individual one, and then electrical tape around just to prevent any slippage there. If you don't want to solder that much, you obviously can think of many different ways. Before I forget, I did take an old computer wire I did have off another project and used it for the small black one here. So right now our on and off switch will work. Right now our stock charging switch will work. On the controller we have modified the brakes, and we have modified the electric door lock one and the battery one here as well. If you want to, before you do clip in this or solder in that, I don't think those clips are going to be able to fit through those holes, but if you want to reuse this box for a little bit more weatherproofing, I'll leave that up to you, but do that before you solder this in so that you can slip these lines through those holes and reuse that. I might just cut that off the best I can and open this up and run it through here, so I'll at least have the box port. Like that right there, with the end sticking out. And you might be asking yourself, why aren't you pulling off the male connectors here? It's because, again, I am going to be selling this or reusing it for my brother's razor. But if you don't need it, if you don't care about reselling, then obviously you can take some of these connectors off and make it work. All right, so let's go ahead and show you guys what my connections look like. I'll go ahead and wrap these with some electrical tape as well, just so that there's no metal on metal interference. I honestly didn't know how to connect these circles, and so I just used very small little nuts and washer on top of a little nut there. Same thing. I just had a junk drawer full of some nuts, some old television parts, so I was able to find some. I've already tested it. Everything is working out greatly. The hull is plugged in right there. Again, green on green, blue on blue, yellow on yellow. Everything is testing out fantastically now. Now, after you have everything rigged up, obviously we're not done. We still need to put some connectors over the top of these for protection. But once you have everything connected, and if you are not getting any juice, and I was actually afraid of this last night, I tested it out and I was like, I'm not getting any juice. What's going on? I ran into 2 different problems, but I wasn't getting any juice out of the feed. Now, the feed is what I'm talking about, is your line going out from the batteries. So everything is in sync here. When you test that line right there with a multimeter, you should be getting 48 or above volts coming out of that. I was not, and I was like, what's going on? So, because I have so many fuses, I do need to go to the store and get some proper fuses. I have a 20 in here, 25 in here, and a 30 in that one. Each one of these is supposed to be carrying a 30, so I actually need to go to Home Depot and get 2 more 30s. But just for testing purposes, the 20 in here, 25 in here, and the 30 in there are working. But that was my first problem. I had a broken fuse. I replaced the fuses, then I had juice. I had my correct reading coming out of my battery terminal, not the controller terminal, the battery portion. When you test that with a multimeter, again, I was registering about 51. It's above 48, that's totally fine. Okay, well, we tacked it up with the 25 and the 20 again, just to check it out. It worked in the garage and it worked for about a football field before, you guessed it, I blew my 20 amper right in the middle. As you can see there, it pierced it, cut all power to the motor, and the 25 actually held. But I ordered on Amazon some more 30s, so now each single one has a 30 in it, which I should have waited in the first place because I strapped it all back together. It was dialed in beautifully, and then I blew a fuse, put a damper on it, waited 2 days for Amazon Prime. Now we're back up and running. If I can remember, I will link that in the description box below as well. If you do not, I think I've already mentioned it in the video, but if you do not have 2 other, because again, I do have one connected over there at the start of our battery terminals. If you do not have 2 others, then just use regular wiring for that, but you do need at least 1 fuse connected to your upper battery terminal. That is how Scanner Danner did it in his video, and again, I'm very appreciative to him for making those videos. So that was the fix for the first issue. Now I'm up and running. The motor's spinning fine. It's going in the correct propel motion of pushing me forward. And so those were potential problems that I ran into. The throttle's working great. After I removed the old one, same exact thing. Just loosen that nut so it slips all the way onto your brake lever here. It's a great little throttle. Now, I actually have this throttle from another project on the E200 that I did. This one is harder to rig up, meaning there's just different wiring that has to connect to the batteries and the throttle and the key, but it's a very cool throttle. But since this package already came with that throttle, I can live with that one, no big deal. But I think when I redo this one with the same motor setup, I probably will figure out how to mount this throttle up. But I personally wouldn't go off and buy this if you don't really care about the battery indicator. You should know how far you can go. I know that I can go off into the neighborhood for quite a while, and I know my distances. Sometimes I test it a little bit further, I push it a little bit further, but you know, your bike starts slowing down on you, and then you probably need to turn around and go home. What's going on with the lines here? Okay, so unfortunately, what I thought I had to do was reverse one of the brake lines. But again, the polarity doesn't matter because I switched over brake lines with reverse polarity and it didn't matter. So this one is working, but unfortunately, this brake lever, I don't know what's going on with it. I could pull that off and resolder, but I think it might just be a bad line or bad wiring somewhere in there. It's not the end of the world if this does happen with one of your brakes. You can try to fix it. Most likely a new brake lever and wiring would probably fix it, or again, try to resolder, but I know my connection's sound because I tried this connection on both of the brakes and it still didn't work, but this brake on either or the connections worked. So in regards to this, if you have 1 or 2 faulty, like I mentioned earlier, all it's gonna do is there won't be a safety feature in there. If you are holding the brake lever down, the motor will still be able to turn. So with mine, I'm not exactly sure what brake that one is. Whatever brake that is, I'll be holding that down and the motor will still be able to turn. But the one that is working, I'll hold it down and turn the motor, and the motor will not work because of the brake lever being pushed in. Again, not the end of the world. I'm totally okay with it, so we'll continue to push forward. Here's a little useful information. It's a little bit hard to film, so I'm just going to talk you through it. The indicator light, orange and black, that's actually coming in very hot at 50 volts. So you got full power coming to this plug right here. So you probably don't want to do some LED lights that will just totally fry on you with that one. That's coming in very hot. Coming down here to 3-speed, I tested the black pin on the middle one, and then each of the yellow and right, just 2 pins at a time, and those are coming in at 5 volts apiece. Now this is probably the one that you want to use for LED lights underneath the bike, which I'm probably going to do myself. This is coming in the reverse at 4.6 volts of power to this plug right here. And then the charge, of course, is coming in at a full 50 because it's a little bit over 48. And the brake lines are each coming in at 4.6 as well. So if you wanted to rig that up somehow, but again, that's on a safety switch when those levers are pulled. So you got to be careful about that. And let's test the brake lamp now. I forgot to do that one. The brake lamp is actually coming in very hot at 50 volts as well. And that only is when the lever is pulled in, that lights up the rear tail light if that's the way you want to go when the correct plug is put in. Since I only have one, that only receives power from the brake on the left side, not the right side, because my right side is not working. But in your case, you have both working levers. So as you pull either one in, it will give 50 volts to the brake lamp. So make sure you order the proper one if you want to do that. Or you could get some really high-end, high-voltage LED lights. So every time you pull the lever to brake, it would light the whole entire bike up from the underside. What I'm probably going to do, that is really, really cool, but what I'm probably going to do is outrig a small battery pack one, or get a little 5-volt something or other plugged into this one, or my reverse. Now, the lights will be on during the daytime, so I'm thinking about hooking up some sort of like switch, another switch or something or other. That's a little bit more complicated. I'll have to do a little more research on that. Okay, I want to show you guys a few little things here. I'm going to talk a little bit quieter because it is late at night now, but I do have a couple things that we've done. We've covered up every single port right here and here, of course. And we have our battery holder right here, which is going to be almost like a luggage Velcro piece that I actually had upstairs. I have a lot of little trinkets and stuff like that that I use for projects. It's kind of like your junk drawer that you never know. Instead of throwing it away or donating, it always comes in handy. So I use this instead of zip ties, but obviously zip ties would be just fine. Next up, I have foam pads that are helping out for behind the batteries so that it doesn't move back and forth. This is nicely latched down right here. Also up front, we have some more foam smashed in right there. Obviously, our battery covers are going to be going on over, which is going to put pressure on the sides. Now, I know what you're thinking, and I've already mentioned it earlier in the video, we will have a gap, and I was actually able to find some long screws. You're going to need some longer screws. You can do zip ties if you want. If you want to save some dollars, just go ahead and put some zip ties through the holes, tighten it up. That way, if you need to get back in it, just a couple clips, boom, you pull off the battery cover. Next up, we have actual cable ties for computers or for cable management, Velcro, very heavy duty Velcro. We have a long piece wrapped around the controller. The controller I was going to put in this way. You can if you want, but unfortunately it rubbed right up against my on switch, so I wanted to actually lay it flat. That way the on switch goes right here, doesn't interfere with the cords. And I think I already talked about it in the video. I clipped off each side right here because it's not screwing into anything, but obviously do not do that if you eventually want to reuse this for another project potentially. So next up, I do want to talk about what I'm probably going to be doing for the next build. And I would think about not cutting off the back and not cutting off the front. Obviously, you have to flatten the sides down. That's only if you're going to be doing the 15 amp battery. If I would have left the back or the front, I would have been able to slide them in and potentially either get rid of just one or keep both so they're held in there a little bit better, so you wouldn't have to have this foam right here for extra pressure up against it. So that's something to think about as well. This is obviously for my light up here. That's all cable management there. And I am going to be running, and I did do some new zip ties for the brake lines. And then I have another cable management thing right here. I just slipped my brake line that I'm not using, that doesn't work. And the reason why that actually doesn't work is I believe it has to do with the cable line right in through here. I believe that's faulty. That's what's giving off a bad signal. Now, I was going to save it as a surprise for the very end of the video, but I think this is too cool to not mention right now about it. This is 3 AAA batteries. I got this on Amazon. I'll link it in the description box below as well. But let's go ahead and fire it up. It has like 16 different colors. This is some more tape right here. It's actually a little bit longer than I need to. It's about 6 feet, a little over 6 feet, but I'm going to be able to run a couple different directions back and forth underneath the plastic, of course. And I'm going to have the controller. We have some nice 3M Velcro right here for the controller. Some more Velcro just in case. Here's some of those cable management zip ties that I was using earlier. These ones, I don't know where I got these ones from, but these ones are very high end. And the reason I went with battery operated system was because my other ones, I didn't really want to deal with soldering directly into the batteries. It wasn't beefy enough to juice up 5 volts. Most of the LED strips I had were 12 volt. These ones I actually bought, I believe, are 5 volt, but I really liked the fact that I could control it with a remote control as well, changing different lights instead of just one light like a yellow or like a red for that one, etc. All right, I want to show the underbelly of the plastic before I do put it on. And I did the first round with actually electrical tape. Obviously, this comes with tape and some backup tape. Absolutely phenomenal. But you know what? I wasn't exactly sure, and I hate to like undo the whole thing and pull it off and tape it on and see how it looks. So the first round, I actually tacked it on with electrical tape. Well, it was on there already just from the underbelly. But of course, electrical tape, the plasti dip, it was actually able to just pull right off, unfortunately. Well, I mean, it stuck, but like the major cord portions right here were pulling off. So I actually now used hot glue, a little hot glue gun with some hot glue. I think I picked that up at the dollar store. I think I actually already had this or whatnot, but it kind of just your arts and crafts thing. Now, I actually kept the red on, and I know you're thinking, oh, it's just going to pull off. Actually, no, because it will be very nice just in case I need to lift it off later on. I actually hot glued just a couple little tacks here and on the back of the switch here, and then this battery box will be Velcroed on the casing, which is right there. As you can see, the little Velcro pad right there. So this is the setup, and I'm actually very happy with it. Even though it was 6.5 feet or almost 6.5 feet, I'm definitely glad I didn't try to go with 3 feet, because this actually stretches all the way from here all the way around the back, coming up here. And I hot glue gunned, probably doesn't matter, but I hot glue gunned underneath these areas here, and I skipped like every other one. I didn't do the soldering ones just in case I didn't want to heat up any joints or whatnot, and I didn't do it underneath the bolts either. So that's what it looks like there. If you guys have another creative way, obviously do that, but I was able to do it really nicely. Now let's put it all back together and take it for a spin. Now the bolts for the casing, again, these are not the precise size, so please don't go off of this. I just had some spares in my spare bolt bag. These are actually toggle bolts for like drywall and stuff like that. Anyway, let's go ahead and go over here. It's not the prettiest. These are long bolts. I have some black ones up top, and I have some silver ones in the bottom here, and of course they're sticking out a little bit. You can hacksaw those off a little bit more, but when the cover is on, when the plastic's on, you can't even see these ones right here. Let's go ahead and take a look at the gap. Again, it's not very big at all. That's about 2 inches up there, not creased all the way together, and then a little bit more back here because the edge of the batteries. But we still have a full foot peg here. There's gonna be no issues there. And I have this one folded up and a full foot peg there as it's sucked in there. Let's go a little bit better of a shot. There again is our gap right there, which is not too big. Let's see if I can get a little bit better there. There we go, not too bad. And this is where our battery box will be for our LED lights. The back of the motor compartment is looking like this. Obviously, I could clean that up a little bit more, pushing in that motor wire there. And what's nice is I actually have access where this shock will not hit it, but if there's any battery issues, I can actually unlatch that and test it with a multimeter to make sure. And that's how I was able to determine that I blew a fuse, because I was having no power to the batteries. As you can see, this one is barely sticking out. Can't even see the front one down there. It's looking really, really clean. We put on the other grip, hairspray trick, of course. It dries beautifully. I think we are ready to roll. That's pretty cool. Okay, a couple quick things before I forget I want to mention. Now, the MX500 and MX650 are almost identical in regards to the frame, etc. The only things that are majorly different are the placement of the controller. On this one, it was flat as we saw, and on the MX500, it is vertical, planted up that way. It's not going to matter. You can do it the way I did it, so it's not interfering with your switch right there. Next up, if you are wondering, the MX500 has a 36 volt 500 watt motor. The MX650 has a 36 volt 650 watt motor. The controllers, I think, are identical. Don't quote me on that one, but I believe they are identical. That's why this one is just a slight bit faster, because it's 150 watts faster in the motor. Next up is going to be the batteries. If you do not want a little bit of a gap, which I totally think is fine, then go with the 12 volt 12 amp instead of the 15 amp. You're going to get more juice, probably a little bit more speed as well, and I personally don't mind it sticking out just a little bit than it previously did. But if you want a complete flush stock look and cheaper batteries, then go with the 12 volt 12 amp, and again, I will have all that linked in the description box below. We're going to get some test footage, don't you worry about that. I tested it out last night, was whipping really good. I almost got scared because of the top speed. I got up, it was a slight uphill, and I hit 28 miles an hour. I have an app on my phone that actually tells me how fast I'm going according to GPS. And also, my body weight is 155 pounds approximately. I fluctuate between 152, 156, ballpark, somewhere around there. But I'm pretty sure that we can go over 30 on flat. And the torque is amazing as well. Not to mention, this is quieter than the stock 651 for sure. It hums along very nicely. Not to mention, the throttle is so much better than the stock one as well. Definitely a nice upgrade there. .28 on flat. I don't think I've ever got past that. I should be able to get to 30 though. What's great though is I'm doing 25, 26 slight uphill right now. 27, 28 uphill. Now, something to keep in mind, this new motor and controller setup can charge a incline. Absolutely, like it barely, like I don't even notice it losing any power. I get to the very top of this from all the way down. That's a complete incline, just full throttle running it. It's absolutely beautiful. Now, unfortunately, again, like we saw in the speedometer, I haven't been able to get above 28. Obviously, I can if I'm going downhill, but on flat, I'm only with my body weight about 155 pushing 28. But a very slight incline straight, I'm still hitting 28. I've never seen it cross over to 29 on flat or barely inclinable. If you weigh less than that, you probably could easily hit it. I might switch over to lithium ion battery pack later down the road, so stay tuned for that video as well, and that will lighten the load for sure. These lead acids are beefy little critters. Now, as we can see here, here's my app here, and I didn't hit my full maximum speed. I just kept it 26 and under because I was just kind of putting around the neighborhood here. But as you can see here, I did 11.39 miles, and it still had a lot more juice in there. Obviously, the lead acid batteries with the 15 amp, I could easily probably push over 20 miles. Now again, that's because obviously you're not full throttle. Full throttle, you're gonna be wearing that battery out. I will eventually put in a voltage meter so I know how my battery is doing and how much battery I have left. So again, stay tuned for those videos. But that 11.39 miles was in the hills, going up hills, down hills, flat roads. So I've never gone further than that, but there was more juice left in the tank. I just haven't pressed it because I don't want to go too far away from the house and then have to walk my bike back. But I'm just loving that light kit. Everyone who sees it is just completely stoked on it. So thank you for watching the build video. Hit that thumbs up button if it has helped you. Decide if you want to tackle this project or not. All the links, again, are going to be in the description box below the video. You guys have a great day. Hit that subscribe button. Check out all the videos. Take care. Don't let the party stop, guys. Hit one of these videos. Continue to watch. We'll see you soon.